Ladies and gentlemen, hide your gay relatives because today we're talking about Sir Jeffrey Dahmer. Now, I'm sure you've all seen the new Jeffrey Dahmer series. If you're living under a rock, he was a killer who basically people, and he was on some shit. So let's get straight into this. It's gonna be a good one. Let's do it.
Jeffrey Dahmer joined the Army and was sent to Germany. He was eventually discharged for a drinking problem and returned to Ohio. 9 years after Stephen Hicks' murder, the began again.
What happened to you in the 9 years in between that you were able to stop, that you were able to control yourself?
So keep in mind, there was this one killing that he did after he got discharged, and then from there he didn't do anything else. So everybody was like, were you trying to curve it? Like, what was the situation? So this is kind of him explaining it.
It wasn't an opportunity to fully express what I wanted to do. There was just not the physical opportunity to do it then.
So basically, I wanted to kill people. I just couldn't. And hey, I'm going to keep on saying this. Look at Jeffrey before he went to jail, and then look at him now. Why do criminals get so chubby in jail? I don't get it. Like, everyone we cover, they're slimmer than the way they are in jail. They just get chubby. Like, I don't get it. It's a trend. I'm telling you, something's going on.
And I started, when I moved to Milwaukee in '81, I started reading, going to the bookstores. Eventually that led to frequenting the gay bars. And then I...
Keep in mind, he's into dudes, right? So the women were safe in this time. That's why I was like, hide your gay relatives, because this man was only looking for the handsomest dude out there. You know what I mean? So if you're a handsome gay dude back then, be careful.
One time I brought this young man back to the hotel room, the Ambassador Hotel. Was just planning on drugging him and spending the night with him. I had no intention of hurting him. When I woke up in the morning, he had a broken rib here. I was heavily bruised. Apparently I had beaten him to death with my fists.
And you have no memory
I
of it?
have no memory of it. But that's what started the whole spree all over again.
Dahmer says he snuck the corpse.
But hey, he was already going in there with ill intent. Like, you know what I mean? He was already going there to drug him. Like, come on. Just go in there and be normal, bro. But I mean, it's hard to say that to a person like Dahmer. But
of his victim, Stephen Toomey, out of his hotel room in a suitcase. Then he took it to his grandmother's house, where he cut up the body and put it in plastic garbage bags.
When you killed these men, afterwards,
Yo, the guy
were
is
you
savage.
repulsed? Were you upset?
No, at the time it was almost addictive. It was almost a surge of energy. I wouldn't have to.
look at her face. She's like, she did really good keeping it together. But you can tell she's like, oh my God, I'm sitting across from this guy. But at the same time, sweetheart, you're fine. He's probably he doesn't want you. You know what I mean? But
worry about any of their needs or anything. I just had complete control of the situation.
But Jeffrey Dahmer was out of control. The
look at him there. See how slim he was? I think this is when they first got him. Bruh.
urge to kill had overpowered him. As police later learned, he wasn't satisfied with his victim's death. He wanted more.
Why did you photograph them?
It was my way of remembering their appearance, their physical beauty.
Yeah, and that was the thing. He said he wanted to find, like, the prettiest man. You know what I mean? Like, he was only looking for the most physically attractive. It's some sick shit, like, if you think about it. Like,
I also wanted to keep something. If I couldn't keep them there with me whole, at least I felt that I could keep their skeletons. And I even went so far as planning on setting up an altar with the 10 different skeletons skulls and skeletons.
And what was the purpose of the altar going to be?
As a sort of memorial. A point where I could, I don't know, it's so bizarre and strange, it's hard to describe. A place where I could collect my thoughts and feed my obsession.
When the bodies were still in your apartment, there was no time when you would see them and say, this is grotesque, what have I done?
There were times, but the compulsive obsession.
There were times. Yo, what's his name did a great job at acting on him. But like, bro, that is some deep shit right there. Like the amount of time you have to let your mind fester on some shit like that to actually go through with it. I mean, everybody has the occasional intrusive thought, but god damn.
With doing what I was doing overpowered any feelings of revulsion.
This man with a quiet, almost shy demeanor became a master manipulator who was able to lure strangers he met at gay bars to his apartment. He was even able to con the police into returning a 14-year-old boy to him after...
Now, we all know, we all heard about this story. Like, the kid looked like that. And he said it was his lover, and the police let him go back in the house. What kind of craziness is that? This kid looks like he's 7. That's crazy. Like, and the neighbors were telling the police, no, he looks like he's incapacitated. Like, he's young, this and that. The police did not help him.
Neighbors called 911 upset that the child was in the street, naked and bleeding. Dahmer convinced the police that he and the boy were simply having a lover's quarrel.
Is a intoxicated boyfriend of another boyfriend.
How old was this child?
It wasn't a child, it was an adult.
After the police...
It wasn't a child, it was an adult. Bro, shit was wild back in the day, I'll tell you that much.
Left, Jeffrey Dahmer murdered that boy, Conorak synthesymphone. This man says he had a near-fatal encounter with Jeffrey Dahmer.
He wanted to take some picture of my back. He hit me with a rubber hammer on my neck.
He was lucky to escape because by then the killing had become almost routine.
Before you went out to pick up a man, was there any kind of ritual you went through?
I'd go to the nightclubs, drink, watch the striptease shows. And
what's interesting about his eyes, like if you go to Alex Murdaugh, his eyes just look dark and Jeffrey just looks like a normal dude. Like if you look into his eyes, it's like, hey, what's up there, bro? It's nothing crazy I see in his eyes.
If I didn't meet anyone at the bars, I'd go to the bath clubs and meet someone there, offer them money, and we'd go back to the apartment, have a few drinks. I'd have the sleeping pill mixture already prepared. Person would drink it, fall asleep, and that's when they would be strangled.
Watching the movie Exorcist 3 was also part of his ritual. It put him in the mood for murder.
I felt so hopelessly evil and perverted that I actually derived a sort of pleasure from watching that tape.
Did you like feeling evil?
No, I didn't, but...
No, it just provided comfort that something else was just as evil as him. That was the whole point of watching The Exorcist so many times. It did provide comfort, and I could totally see why it did. You're that fucked up, and at the time, you don't really have the internet, so you're that fucked up, The Exorcist comes out, and you kind of identify with that. You know what I mean? So, yeah, bro. Some real shit. If you find yourself having like compulsions and thoughts like this, that's when it's good to go to therapy. It's good to talk to people. It's good to kind of get it out so that you can kind of diagnose yourself and flush it through. If you hold it in like him, who knows what you're gonna end up doing, and you don't get away in this day and age.
I tried to overcome the thoughts, and it worked for a while, but eventually I gave in.
While Jeffrey Dahmer may say things today that make it seem like he understands what went on in his mind, he does not. All he can do is tell you what happened, but he cannot stop whatever it is that drove him to kill in the first place.
Do you still feel those same urges? Do you still feel that compulsion, that obsession?
I wish I could say that it just left completely, but no, there are times when I still do.
Yeah, so in other words, if you were ever to let me out, if I was an 89-year-old man and there was a 14-year-old boy that I can overpower, best believe I'm doing it. That's what he's telling you. So yeah, I think the whack penalty was the best idea.
Still do have the old compulsions.
The death penalty.
And coming next, as we continue, Dahmer talks about how his obsessions became more and more out of control.
I was dead set on going with this compulsion. It was the only thing that gave me any satisfaction.
To protect ourselves against monsters like Jeffrey Dahmer, it is important to know how they think, how they operate. Dahmer is an intelligent man, someone who could live just about anywhere. Nancy now continues.
Having these obsessive thoughts when
He was clever enough to continue to elude police and lure young men to his apartment. We should warn you, the details are very graphic.
I started having these obsessive thoughts when I was about 15 and 16, and they got worse and worse.
What were your fantasies about?
They were sexual fantasies.
When you sigh, you already know it's about to be some bad, heavy shit. Like when someone asks you, like, "Oh, what happened to you today?" and someone's like, it's kind of like, shit, I shouldn't have asked that question, should I?
Control, power, complete dominance. They became reality.
Was there pleasure in that fantasy?
There was excitement, fear,
I wonder if you
pleasure,
got
all
a
mixed
nut.
together.
Jeffrey Dahmer fulfilled his fantasies by murdering and dismembering 17 young men. In time, his desires became more extreme, his deeds more grotesque. Listen to him talk about the most unnatural things in the most matter-of-fact of ways.
He was into black dudes. I ain't gonna lie to you. He was into black and Hispanic dudes, bruh.
That's when you realize that none of it has touched him.
I was branching out. That's when the cannibalism started, eating of the heart and the arm muscle. It was a way of making me feel that they were a part of me. At first it was just curiosity, and then it became compulsive. Then I tried to keep the person alive by inducing a zombie-like state.
Yeah, by pumping acid into their heads or some crazy shit like that. See, the problem is he just has like a compulsion issue, and it just kind of spiraled in the wrong direction. But
by injecting first dilute acid solution into their brain, or
look at him trying to be a scientist. Dilute acid solution into their brain, because that would provide a zombie effect. No, it's gonna kill them. You fucking hard. Like
hot water, and it never did completely work.
Could someone like you be stopped? Could you be helped?
No, I was dead set on going with this compulsion. It was the only thing that gave me any satisfaction.
He became so warped by his evil impulses that he even took a victim's head with him to work at the Ambrosia chocolate factory.
I kept the mummified...
he took a head to work. Like it was show and tell. I never heard about this. Damn, he did not give a fuck. He was out here letting his nuts hang. I'm gonna let you know that much.
Head and skull of one of the victims in a carrying case in my locker at work.
Were you almost flaunting it?
Yes,
Kind
but
of.
that's how strong the compulsion was. That's how bizarre the desire was. I wanted to keep something of the person with me.
Jeffrey Dahmer exhibited some disturbing behavior early on. He began drinking heavily as a teenager, dropped out of college, was arrested for indecent exposure
I mean, is that really disturbing behavior or teen shit? You know what I mean?
disorderly conduct, and fondling a 13-year-old boy. Tragically, one of his murder victims would be that boy's brother.
Hold on now. Hold on. Never mind.
Do you know what
Cancel what I
started
said.
it? Was there any kind of incident that you can remember?
To this day, I don't know what started it. And the person to blame is sitting right across from you. That's the only person. Not parents, not society, not pornography. I mean, those are just excuses.
His macabre 13-year crime spree finally ended when this man
13 years. That's crazy. Now, you see the guy in the hat right there? He actually went to jail about a decade later. So we probably should cover that because his story, it's a sad but interesting one. So
Tracy Edwards brought the police to the infamous
Tracy
apartment. Like the others, he had gone there with the promise of money.
He was listening to my heart because at a point he told me he was going to eat my heart at that point. I hit him and I ran.
What was the turning point for you that made you suddenly realize that you had done something terribly wrong, something you should be sorry for?
It was the night of the arrest. I have no memory of what happened during the 6 hours before the last victim ran out of the apartment. I heard a knock on the door, and the police were there with the last victim. They asked me where the key was to the handcuffs. My mind was in a haze. I sort of pointed to the bedroom, and that's where they found the pictures. And they yelled, "Cuff him." And I was handcuffed.
that's crazy. He's such an idiot. He didn't let them, like, he still could have used his brain and been like, no, you can't enter. You know what I mean? But he just points at the bed and they walk on in. So he just allows them to come in and gets himself caught. So either one of two things. Like, he's been around for 13 years killing people. Maybe he's tired. Maybe he kind of wants to show it off. Or two, he was so hazed from getting hit that he just pointed the police into the room.
And it was just the realization that there was no point in trying to hide my actions anymore. The best route was to help the police identify all the victims and just make a complete confession.
When it was revealed that most of the victims were black or homosexual, people in Milwaukee were incensed. Many felt that was why he went after them and why the police didn't seem to care when their families reported them missing.
10 of your 17 victims were black. Were they racially motivated
It was
crimes?
not racially motivated.
No, I can answer this before he even talks. He was into black dudes. The problem was he was into, like, killing sexual behaviors. So that's not good. You know, once we merge violence and sex, it's never good. So, yeah, it's not racially motivated.
It was not sexual preference. It was just to find an obsession with the best-looking young man I could find.
While you just heard him say that his sexual preference had nothing to do with the
It was sexual preference. He doesn't even realize it, but
killings,
No.
he has not come to terms with his homosexuality.
Never understood it. There was no use trying to fight it because I couldn't rid myself of it. It was too powerful and persistent.
Do you dislike it?
Yes, it's caused a lot of problems for me. A lot of conflicts and unanswered questions.
The conflicts remain with him, and so do his compulsions. But in prison, he finally cannot act on his savage desires.
If you were out on the street now, would you still be committing the crimes?
Probably. If this hadn't happened, there's no doubt I probably would be. I can't think of anything that would have stopped me.
Boy, does he come across as cold-blooded. Did you see any remorse?
Well, he says he's sorry, Bill, but I'm not sure he knows what that means.
I've wondered myself why I I don't have the death penalty. That's what I deserve. I deserve death.
What do you think happens after you die?
Right. That's the big unknown. I've had thoughts of, but I just...
But you're too much of a bitch. Nah, shouldn't do that. But, I mean, a guy like him, there's like... He's never coming out anyway, so it doesn't matter. Like you said, it doesn't really matter if someone comes after him or not.
Haven't been able to carry them through. So, I don't know what the future will hold.
In the past, Jeffrey Dahmer was very sure of what he wanted and how to get it. 17 young men would die at his hands. Later, when he made this confession to the police, he included crimes too grotesque to repeat on television, too gruesome to be believed. Dismemberment, cannibalism, and worse. And he was cunning enough to get away with it for 13 years.
Why was it so easy, though, for you to hide it all?
I desensitized myself to it. I don't know. I went to great lengths. I bought security systems, installed them myself in the apartment. I had a video camera in the corner of the room.
He had all that just to point the police into his room after he got hit in the head. Like, come on, bro.
Installed locks on the doors. Sirens and stuff in case anyone broke into the apartment.
And although his victims' body parts were in the apartment, when his father and stepmother came to visit, they detected nothing.
They said it was absolutely clean, perfect.
Right.
How'd you hide from them?
Everything was locked up, either in the freezer or in the file chest. And so there was no evidence laying in the open.
But it stink. Like, they had to know something was going on. Everybody who went into his apartment said it stunk. You know, like death. So either his parents were a little nose blind or they just didn't see some things in their son that they didn't want to see.
There was nothing abnormal about the look of the apartment.
And he almost got caught after a 14-year-old victim escaped into the street naked and bleeding. When neighbors called 911, Dahmer managed to talk his way out of trouble.
During the incident where the police were called,
Mm-hmm.
and the young boy was returned to you, that didn't wake you up at all? Police on your doorstep?
They were in the apartment. They were actually in the apartment, and there was a dead young man in the bedroom on the floor. I couldn't believe it when it turned out that they didn't see anything. I couldn't believe it. And yes, it did shock me, but not enough to quit. That's how strong the compulsion was.
Jeffrey Dahmer describes the unspeakable with no emotion.
And he's kind of an idiot too, and he just kind of stumbled his way into luck. Back in the day, they didn't really have, like they said, it was the prime for, killing people, because back in the day, they didn't really have CCTV. The cops were homophobic. They didn't really want to deal with, the gay community. So it's really easy to get away with stuff like that.
It is as if he sees his victims as objects, not people. In fact, when he confessed, he remembered every horrific detail of what he did to them, but he couldn't remember their names.
Do you ever think about your victims?
I've often wondered why I haven't had more dreams or nightmares about what I've done. For some reason, it's like it's blocked off from part of my mind. If I dwelled on the subject all the time, I wouldn't be able to function.
Jeffrey Dahmer prefers to hide from the difficult truth about himself. That has always been his pattern. Even during his trial, he found a way to tune out.
You're wearing glasses now.
Right.
You didn't during the trial. Why not?
I didn't want to. I felt uncomfortable looking anyone in the face. I didn't want to see anyone's face clearly. It helped me disassociate myself from what was happening.
And he was a little scaredy cat. Like, to be honest, I remember that detail. Like, he always wore glasses, you know, the famous serial killer glasses. And then all of a sudden in court, he's just no glasses. And you see them thick lenses. He needed that shit. So he was super blind in court.
One woman in particular really got angry. What did you think when she was doing that?
I couldn't blame her a bit. I'm surprised there wasn't more of that.
What do you want to say to the families of the victims?
I had no intention of hurting them. I was extremely selfish. I was only thinking of myself, my own pleasure, my own perverted desires.
You know the families of the victims don't believe in your conversion or your sorrow.
Oh, right. And if I was on their end of the table, I wouldn't either.
Oh, right. His accent gets me, man. But yeah, I mean, who can believe that you believe in God? You just told us that you have urges still. Therapy doesn't work. If you go out on the streets, you'll do it again. Do you expect anybody to believe that you've converted to anything? Like, come on. Get out of here.
Ultimately, I'm accountable to the Lord Jesus Christ. He'll be my final judge.
Can your sins be forgiven?
The Lord Jesus Christ's shed blood is powerful enough to wipe out even my sins.
And I like how he uses that one point in the Bible to X everything out. But hey, you know, only one person will know if he's genuine or not. It's not us, so.
He had to deal with some of the terrible realities of his life. Jeffrey Dahmer's conversation would veer off into scripture. Like many other criminals, he claims he has found God in prison, and his daily routine reflects his need to shut out the world.
I usually wake up at 6:30 in the morning, go eat breakfast, and then sleep until noon, wake up for lunch, and sleep until about 4 o'clock in the afternoon, eat dinner, and then spend the greater portion of the night watching TV.
He is up all night.
Oh, okay. That's why he's getting chubby. He's out here literally eating and sleeping, hibernating. Your boy's out here hibernating and watching TV at night. Yeah, that's why I got chubby.
Because he cannot face the daylight and the monstrous crimes that put him behind bars.
I try not to think too deeply about anything, because then I get depressed. I try to figure out why this happened, what started these thoughts in my head at such a young age, whether this has any meaning to it, or whether this is all just a horrible coincidence, you know, all the events in my life. I feel that I'm better off here than I was on the outside doing what I was doing.
At least, like, throughout this entire interview, he seems genuine. Like, he truly believes that he deserves the death penalty. He truly believes that he deserves to be behind bars, you know. But if he wasn't, he would go crazy. I don't know, man. This is a weird case. Like, the guy, you can't really crack the code of what's going on in his mind.
You're glad you're in prison.
I think it's best for everyone, right?
And you heard Jeffrey Dahmer say he wants to be punished. The victims' families agree. They voice their opinions tomorrow. And Jeffrey Dahmer talks about his early years and his family life. Why did this happen?
I had normal friendships in high school, but after that, I started in with the alcohol, drinking, a lot of solitary drinking. And
that's another thing. Who the fuck drinks by themselves, bro? Do y'all drink by yourselves? I don't. Like, I'll take 2 beers while I'm working, you know, late at night, but I don't get drunk by myself. That shit's weird. Like, what am I gonna do? Like, dance by myself? Like,
really never had any close friendships after that, after high school.
Don't drink, guys.
Just
smoke weed.
Sort of lived in my own thought life, fantasy world.
What created those twisted fantasies is a question many are asking. According to some experts, Jeffrey Dahmer does not fit the profile of a ritual murderer.
The typical serial killer kills for the thrill, for the excitement. He wants to hear the victim scream and shout and try to get away.
Northeastern University professor Jack Levin is a sociologist and criminologist who has studied hundreds of serial killers. He says what he saw in our interview surprised him.
I think the very fact that he sedated his victims before he strangled them, which is the last thing that most serial killers would do, gives us an indication that he may actually have felt guilty and that he did care, at least to some extent, about his victims. He's a little bit different in a number of ways.
Yeah. I totally 100% agree with that, Doctor. He's kind of a hybrid because, like you said, people with that sadistic nature, they want to see the fear. They want to see you scream. But he was more like ashamed of it the entire time. He was ashamed of being gay. He was ashamed of wanting to hurt people in a sexual manner. He wanted them to, be under his control. But I feel like he just wanted them to not be screaming and in torture, so he's a hybrid. He's an interesting case.
And the very fact that he necrophiled his victims is a clue that he felt extremely rejected, abandoned, and he couldn't even have sex with his victims while they were alive in most cases. He had to kill them first.
Were you molested?
Never.
In your childhood, you have any memories of anything that you would associate with what you became?
No, that's the strange thing. I can't pinpoint anything.
So there was nothing in your childhood?
No abuse, no physical abuse, no verbal abuse. It was a normal childhood in a good home. Something went awry in my thought life. I don't know why.
He grew up on this quiet, tree-lined street in Bath, Ohio. Friends say the young Jeffrey Dahmer exhibited some unusual interests.
Were you obsessed with dead animals? Is that true?
I was interested in taxidermy in high school and experimented with...
That's how you cover up being interested in dead animals. Oh, yeah, I just like doing taxidermy, Bro, I don't know. Taxidermy clearly just isn't my thing, but... I just think it's weird. I don't know. If y'all do taxidermy, hit me up. Hit me up in the comments and tell me why it's not weird. Because I think it's kind of weird.
Preserving the bones of dogs and things like that. And whether that had anything to do with the escalation of the crimes, I don't know.
But by all accounts, his terrible crimes are far removed from his ordinary beginnings. His father, Lionel, is a chemist who taught his son how to play tennis. His mother, Joyce, was a housewife. The family split apart when Jeffrey Dahmer turned 18. A court order kept his father away from the house. His mother, who had been hospitalized for mental problems, left too. It was when he was alone in the house that Jeffrey Dahmer committed his...
And back in the day, they're not going to give you some meds and some therapy. Nah, you exhibit some behavior that you're crazy, they locking you up. They putting you in the white jumpsuit. They're making you more crazy. They're not going to help you. So I can imagine what happened to his mom's
first murder.
Let me put this in perspective. There are millions of people who get divorced. There are millions of people who have step-parents. And what does it do to them? Well, it doesn't make them kill. It doesn't make them cannibalize. I think we've got to understand that we might be able to explain part of this, but we're not able to predict who's going to turn out to be a serial killer.
Jeffrey Dahmer's father and stepmother Sherry say when he was in trouble in the past, they tried to get him help. They were as shocked as everyone else to hear about his secret life.
The pain is watching the families having to sit there and listen to the gory details. And yet, what do we say to these families out there who don't even have the child to bury in many cases? Such a tragic waste. And we can't do anything about it.
They say around them, Jeffrey Dahmer acted as if nothing was wrong.
How did you live that double life? How did you go to work? How did you have a normal relationship with your family?
When you try to keep a terrible secret like I was, it warps every other aspect of your life. But I managed to go to work, conduct myself just like anyone else would.
Jeffrey Dahmer is determined to try to explain his hideous crimes. But why would he take the mask off now? Jack Levin says he thinks he knows.
You know, it's very hard to feel sympathy.
Yeah, no, the dude, I think, always felt remorse. And that's what makes him so interesting. Like, not remorse in that sense, but he always felt like, oh, you know, I probably shouldn't be doing this.
For someone who has killed 17 people and has cannibalized their remains, I think he wanted a chance to let people know that he did care, that he was a remorseful human being. Now, I'm not sure that came through, but I think that was his intention.
Hold up real quick. I gotta shout you guys out for getting me up to 2K, right? 2K subscribers. I love you guys. Get me up to 3K. Make sure you tell your grandma, your auntie, your niece, your nephew, your cousin. Tell everybody, hit that subscribe button. Love you guys.